Happy Friday, everyone. I hope everyone is doing fantastic today. The sun is shining through my window right onto my face. A little different look here for the show. The Magic are back at practice since Hurricane Ian. I hope everyone was able to pull through okay. But it's time to get back to it. It's time for another live edition of Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is September 30th, 2022. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the Orlando Magic get back to work after 2 days off because of Hurricane Ian. We're back in the saddle too, trying to catch you up on what the Magic are up to and what the Magic are trying to do to catch up after missing 2 days. We'll also hear from Jamal Mosley after practice on Friday, as well as he updates us on where the Magic are at and what they're doing in training camp. And we'll tie up some kind of, first week of training camp notes and items as we get ready for the first preseason game coming up on Monday. We'll preview that Monday, as well as talk about Bowl on that show too. So a lot to get to here. We're going to try and make this relatively quick, though I know it's a Friday night for a lot of you. But before we do any of that, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic your first listen every day, no matter when you listen, or no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day, every day, and part of your daily routine. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. The Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is also brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered with this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Obviously, from a basketball perspective, things have not been ideal for the Orlando Magic so far to start training camp. Markelle Fultz, Gary Harris out with injuries, two rotation players at minimum, not able to participate in training camp. And then we get hit with a massive event. Just a huge event. And the sun is setting, so if it gets dark around me, I apologize. I forgot to turn on some extra lights here. This is all new to me. A massive storm event. For those of you who live in Florida, I hope you were able to ride out Hurricane Ian successfully. I hope that there's as little damage as possible here in Orlando. And like I told a lot of people who are new to this, who this was their first hurricane, I explained to everyone, I'm a lifelong Orlando resident, I explained to everyone that typically hurricanes weaken significantly by the time they reach Orlando, by the time they reach Central Florida, and that is what happened in this case. Hurricane Ian ended up coming over Orlando or Central Florida area as a Category 1 hurricane, which is still a very serious thing. Floridians tend to be a little bit more blasé about hurricanes, but did hit Florida as a Category 1 storm that did come with some massive damage. If you are on the Universal Orlando annual pass holder, if you follow that a little bit, there's a big hole in the side of the Jurassic Park building, so if anyone sees a T-Rex on I-4, that's where it comes from. Honestly, though, from all that I've heard and seen, I work for a news station for my day job. The wind damage hasn't been the killer of this storm. The killer of this storm has been the flooding. And so this is an update for those who are not in Central Florida. If you're in Central Florida, you know this. The Fort Myers, Gulf Coast, Bay Area, Gulf Coast got completely killed. And if you can find a way to donate and help those, not just here in Central Florida, obviously, but in the Fort Myers, Naples, Tampa Bay area, please find a way to do so. Though those communities got hit very, very hard by this storm, and it is very, very rare that a storm this powerful develops out in the Gulf Coast in the way that it did. A lot of people have been comparing this storm to Hurricane Charlie from 2004. There are a lot of similarities between these two storms, especially in the paths that they took. I believe this is the first hurricane to hit Orlando directly since Hurricane Charlie did. And Hurricane Charlie essentially just went straight up I-4 in one night. But Charlie was super powerful and compact and fast. This thing moved pretty slowly. This was a solid 12-hour storm that was extremely powerful, had very heavy winds, brought a lot of rain, and just lasted a long time. And that's really been kind of the story for the community and the story for Central Florida. It's been a lot of flooding. It's been a lot of just standing water. And fortunately, where I live in downtown Orlando, the damage was really minimal. There were a few traffic signs that went down. I don't believe we ever lost power in downtown Orlando, and so I'm very, very fortunate on that. But not a block away from me, the day after the storm and during the storm, not a block from me, the road was completely flooded. If you know downtown Orlando, I live right by Lake Eola. Lake Eola flooded the surrounding streets, and those are very busy thoroughfares. But I'm sitting here today, Friday. The streets are completely clean. I actually went to the Publix right across the street from Lake Eola, and while they were busy still restocking some things, the roads were completely clear, and it's really a kind of a miracle that happened. Unfortunately, I can't say that about all the areas of Central Florida. Seminole and Osceola counties, the two counties that kind of surround Orlando. Orlando is an orange county for those that are unfamiliar with Central Florida geography. Seminole County to the north, Osceola County to the south, both got hit very hard with flooding. I believe there was water rescues. We were under a flash flood warning throughout much of the evening and much of the day on Thursday. Seminole County was hit with a flash flood emergency. One of the lakes completely flooded and caused serious damage and required water rescues from local authorities. In Orange County here, one of the apartment buildings over by UCF completely flooded. I was told by someone that the floods actually kind of erased the first floor of a major apartment building in Central Florida. So while certainly us Floridians tend to take this stuff a little lighter, we definitely understand how to handle ourselves during hurricanes. There's still a lot of damage. There's still a lot that happened during this storm. Before we even, and I want to just get all that out before we even get into the basketball today. The DeVos Family Foundation is donating $1 million to Hurricane Ian relief efforts here in Central Florida. They're going to various organizations. I believe $500,000 is going to the Orlando United Way, if I'm not mistaken. I may be a little bit off on that one, but it's despite how well Orlando pulled through this storm, and Orlando did pull through this storm very, very well. This was still a major, major, major event, and so basketball deserves to be in the second and third blocks of the show, just to give that update to everyone that may not be aware of what's going on in Orlando. As soon as we don't have like an official hurricane relief effort posting here. But if you want to share with me hurricane relief efforts or hurricane relief funds, I would love to share with my listeners and let everyone know that there are ways to help us here in Florida recover from what is an event. I have lived in Orlando my entire life. I have been through several hurricanes. I was in middle school during the summer of 2004. When we got hit with 3 hurricanes like right in a row. I believe it was Charlie, Francis, and Ivan. Francis sucked because Francis was big and slow. It wasn't powerful, but it was big and slow, and it stopped. It actually stopped. And literally, hurricanes like spin. This thing actually stopped right on top of us, and so we were just kind of sitting there without power for 2-3 days. And again, where I live was very fortunate. We got our power back very, very quickly. I had friends in high school and middle school those years who did not get their power back for weeks. I'm sure there are people still dealing with that and still without power today, even as the storm has moved on and even as Orlando has done more than pick itself up here in the time being. Obviously, there's still a whole lot more work to do. Again, if there's a way for you to help, kind of boost this community and help us get kind of move forward and move on, please find a way to do so. It is obviously a really big thing, and obviously this is a major event that deserved, frankly, to put basketball on the back burner. But the Magic were back at practice on Friday. They were able to get back in the gym. We'll talk a little bit about what they did today, how they're feeling, and what they're trying to do to catch up on some lost time. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. There's, of course, no easy way to make the transition from that to what I have to say next. A quick word from our pals at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for our football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-minute scores for every sport out there. The fast, easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. I actually got the email today from our pals at BetOnline. I'm going to open it up right now. They have opening lines for the first games of the season. Isn't that exciting? For the opening games of the season. The Orlando Magic at the Detroit Pistons, currently on BetOnline, set at Pistons minus 4.5. So a little bit more than that typical 3-point line that you see for the home team. The over-under set at 218. So 218 would be, I believe if both teams scored the same number of points, that would be 109. Someone double check me on that math. But 109 to 109, that's a pretty high number for two teams that were two of the worst offenses in the league last year. But you can check it out now. Magic at Pistons minus 4.5. You can go back and check my episode with Ku Kahil of Locked On Pistons, as we recorded that last week before the hurricane and all that. But definitely check that out. But you can find all the latest numbers at BetOnline. So head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. That big day, October 19th, is coming quickly. We're 20 days away from the start of the Orlando Magic's regular season. And we are not so far away now, 3 days away from the start of the preseason. The Orlando Magic will take on the Memphis Grizzlies in Memphis on Monday to open their preseason. So, yes, the Hurricane sucked. The Hurricane is awful for a number of reasons. Near the very bottom of that list is the fact that the Magic lost 4 practices, 2 days of training camp, 2 two-a-day days. But really, that is not what the Magic were thinking about as they got back to work. It was not what the Magic were thinking about as they got back on the court and played basketball again. They certainly feel fortunate to play basketball again. They feel fortunate to be in this position where they can play this game and get back to work. And really, the feeling when we got into the gym was a lot of just happiness to be back on the court and a continuation of the good vibes and excitement and kind of first day of school energy that you feel on the first day of training camp. It almost felt like another first day of school for the Orlando Magic. No doubt, though, while yes, there are a few teams that started a little earlier because they were making international trips this preseason, but no doubt, though, the Magic lost time, and they lost prep time, and they lost time to kind of get themselves back into rhythm, back into shape, back into game shape, time to rebuild their foundations. I don't know if Monday's game is being broadcast anywhere yet, but when you look at that box score, keep that in mind. It's not that the Magic can't catch up to everyone and kind of get themselves back into that rhythm, back in that game shape and all that, but Monday's game could be very, very rough because the Magic simply didn't have the time to get all those foundations and fundamentals in. Where a lot of Tuesday's practice, at least the early session, was spent focusing on defense and really honing in on the team's defensive fundamentals and values, what Jamal Mosley said Friday's practice was feeling the energy of being back together, of being thankful, of getting through the storm, and beginning to just kind of continue to layer those foundations on, but just feel that energy once again, to feel the energy of being together. And that's obviously all a good thing. I don't think the Magic are necessarily wrong to feel that way. There's obviously a lot more that goes into it. I'm sure there was still some drill work. There was still some offense that was layered in. There was still some defensive principles. There's still all those foundational pieces that you expect from a preseason, from a training camp practice. But the Magic lost time. They will have 4 fewer practices than they were scheduled to have, and they might make up one of them on Saturday. Mosley said that the plan is Saturday to practice in the afternoon, in the late morning, early afternoon, and then decide later if they're going to practice later in the evening before they practice again Sunday, and then head to Memphis Sunday afternoon. It's there's still a lot of that at play. There's still a lot of understanding like we have to catch up and make up some time, but that wasn't the message. There was a question that I was curious about. A question that I asked was, did you feel like coming to practice that you had to make up for some lost time? That, yes, the reality is the Magic made the right decision not practicing during a freaking hurricane. Like that's a no-brainer decision. I'd question the organization if they forced this group to head into the gym and practice during all this. There are things that are far more important. But the reality is too that is an opportunity lost. And Mosley and most of the players kind of waved that notion away. That's like, yes, we understand that, we have to make up some time. We're confident that we can. But the focus was to treasure the moment and win the day. We can't, it's like being in a deficit. You can't make it all back up in one shot. It's about getting a stop. It's about it's having good execution. It's about focusing in more to make up that ground slowly but surely. And obviously this is not a deficit like you're down 20 with 10 minutes to play. Those are the moments where you do have to focus in a little bit more. And I think that was the overall message. And Mosley's message, which you'll hear coming up here, is just to go out and win the day. To go out and do your best today, to take advantage of the time given. And, the consistent message was that this is a larger lesson that anyone can take. That it's not about what you should be or where you should be. It's about what can you do with what you have in front of you. And that was what the Magic were trying to do. And that's what the Magic hopefully did on Friday. Whether they did or not, everyone's pretty optimistic in the preseason, obviously. But whether they did or not is up to the coaches and up to the players to really determine as they assess what they did. Just kind of some quick notes from practice then. They did do a lot of 5-on-5. They did do some 5-on-5 work. There's a promise or there's a statement that they're going to play a lot to kind of build up the camaraderie, and build up the competition, and build up, yes, the accountability within this team. So there was a little bit of that. Excuse me. But one of the notes that came out, and we'll talk more about this on Monday's episode of Locked On Magic, was they are experimenting with lineups. Mosley noted that they did, or Wendell Carter noted that they did try a lineup with Wendell Carter, Paolo Banchero, and Bol playing together. Carter noted that, or I think it was Cole Anthony noted that Bamba lined up for a shot and Bol was able to get to it and block it. There's been a lot of Bol buzz going on at training camp. And again, who knows what's real and what isn't? We will find out Monday. But everyone's buzzing about Bol and saying that he's the best shooter among the big men. Cole Anthony would like everyone to know that his team won that game when those three were trioed together. But nonetheless, it is a potential lineup that the Magic do have that they can experiment with. And the lineup, from what I understand, was Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner playing alongside those three others as well. So a very, very big lineup that the Magic tried. And yes, there's going to be some false starts. There's a lot of things that group has to figure out and play together to get going. But it does point a little bit to the potential this group has. There's been a lot of buzz throughout training camp. And yes, that's just 2 days. But even pre-training camp stuff about Caleb Houston. Cole Anthony called him an elite shooter, an elite shooting prospect. And everyone's been buzzing about his basketball IQ and how hard that he works too. So it feels like a lot that players on the team are excited about. But again, they're also being asked about these players. No one's going to say a bad thing at this stage of training camp. We'll see what it all looks like when they hit the floor on Monday. And again, that's going to be sprinkled with some salt as well because of everything that's been going on. My effort right now, I'm trying to get more videos, show you have some raw sound. So we will hear from Jamal Mosley as the Magic resume practice. He'll repeat some of the points that I made here as well as we get ready for training camp to begin. When we come back, we will hear from Jamal Mosley.
We'll start with the most important thing. How is everybody after the storm, after the hurricane that came through?
I think that's a good question, Toby. But before we go into it and finish those questions, we're fortunate enough to be here, yes, and we got practice underway. But I just want to say, our thoughts and prayers are going out to the people that have been impacted and affected, by Hurricane Ian. I think things you can control, we can control. Things you can't. But we want to make sure that they understand that our hearts and our thoughts and prayers are with them, because that's the real thing, and that's what the communities need to understand and that we're with them and we're continuing to think about them as we move forward and recover from it.
Coach, we saw the DeVos family step up with the $1 million donation to the family, people affected. Just how big is it, and how much do they continue to impact with their 30-30 gifts, etc.?
I think it's just truly incredible, and it understands that we talk about perspective of things, us, the sport that we're in, but it's more important how much we give back and take care of people and take care of those lives that have been impacted and affected by the hurricane. And you just want to make sure that we can do as much as possible, that they know we care and we're willing to do what's necessary to make sure that people feel that from us.
Was anybody on the team or even the staff affected by it?
From what we were getting, we just have some leaks in roofs, power outages, certain situations. Some people got hit with some flooding, but like I said, we are very fortunate, to be that we didn't get hit, as hard. But that's why I said, just your continued thoughts and prayers go out to those that are truly dealing with the devastating impact of what it did.
You've been in the Orlando area for over a year now, so you've seen how this community kind of comes together in times of need. Do you kind of get that sense already that that's how it's going to be this time around?
It is such an incredible community. I mean, the togetherness that they continue to show, the rallying behind one another, making sure that everyone is taken care of. I just think it's something special about this city and this community that no one is left out, and that's the biggest thing, that we'll continue to pull together and we'll continue to work to make sure that everybody gets the things that they need in this time.
Obviously, you had to kind of interrupt practice a little bit, getting back into the gym, getting ready for preseason game on Monday, getting ready for the season. Was there a little bit of urgency to kind of make up for some of the lost time, or how did you approach today's practice?
Philip, that's a good question, and I told our guys before, you're not going to get time back. And so don't put the pressure on yourself to get time back. So what you need to do is have the perspective of, let's win today. Let's take care of today. Let's take care of what we can control in this moment. Yes, there are other teams out there practicing and getting drills, and that's going to be understood. But one thing about this team and just like this community, we're going to be resilient and take what's handed to us and make the most out of it and do our best in that moment. And that's what these guys showed today, and they worked their tails off knowing that, and blessed to be in this situation right now, to be able to get in the gym to play and be amongst them.
Did you adjust any of your practice from Tuesday or today was going to be around? How did having to plan or a major affect how you planned out?
Well, what we did look at was that these guys were going to be off for a couple of days, so making sure that they just get in and feel the energy of being back in the gym around each other. So not putting too much on, hey, we got to get this covered and that covered, versus, everybody's dealing with something. And everybody, making sure their families are taken care of, making sure their families are safe. So just being back in here with the energy and the chemistry and camaraderie was a big portion of it. And then we'll move forward, obviously understanding game plan and things we need to do to continue our foundation. But the biggest thing is that they got in the gym together and understand that, that we're going to stay tied together with all of it.
Kind of along those lines, I think it was Wednesday you had planned for a two-a-day. I think Thursday was just one practice. Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you now going to do maybe a two-a-day today or two-a-day? You can maybe not get the time back, but just to get more time in the gym before Monday?
Again, part of it is us not getting those 2 days. We want to make sure that the guys are recovering mentally as well as physically. So we'll go one today, and then after we get the one in tomorrow, we'll play a little bit of that by ear, because obviously we'll be traveling on Sunday. So we want to make sure that the families are safe, that everybody gets their homes taken care of, and that's first priority. And then as we move into getting things covered, there's a lot of film work that will be done. There's a lot of one-on-one sessions. There will be a lot of small group sessions that we'll do, and then we'll play that second practice by ear in some ways. But see how guys respond to going a little longer today, and then tomorrow see how they feel after that first session.
To that point, how did the guys handle the energy being back in the gym? What was it like for everyone?
Well, I really understand. I feel that these guys were grateful for just being able to get back in the gym. These young guys are chomping at the bit to be around one another, to continue to work on their craft, to be around each other in this light. So that was really good. That's why the energy, was very turned up today. That these guys got after it. They pushed each other. They were vocal. They really worked. There was an energy in the building today.
With Caleb, what has stood out? It's obviously pretty early in the process of training camp. What has stood out about him? And it might be too early to kind of figure out locations. But what kind of role do you kind of see him playing this season?
Well, the great part about Caleb is that he's got a very high basketball IQ and an unbelievable work ethic. He finds himself in the right spacing on offense, and defensively he finds himself on the right spots defensively. So those are two very good qualities that he possesses. And the role that we're going to ask him to do is obviously be that knockdown shooter, that positional defender, and just obviously making the simple and right plays. And as it goes for rotations, the one thing we're going to continue to do is look at different lineups. Each day we'll see a different lineup on the floor. Who plays with who, how the flow works, and then we'll manage that as we go throughout the preseason.
Especially last year, especially early in the season, guys transition maybe could take shots a little earlier, kind of go for the first shot. How much are you emphasizing in these practices, especially more so in transition? It doesn't always have to be the first shot to go for. Maybe you can push it a little bit more, but maybe we're going to find maybe the second shot or the third shot.
Well, that's a great point. And the one thing we always talk about pace, being able to push the ball up the floor. But pace is not necessarily just I got to get up fast and shoot the first shot, to your point. It is about the pace in which I set screens, the pace in which how I cut, how I move off the basketball. And we have guards that can push that basketball up the floor very fast, but it is not necessarily for them to shoot the first thing. It's to flatten out the defense. Now as you move that basketball around the perimeter, and now you have more room for driving and kicking, you have room to space out the floor to get guys in their specific positions.
In light of that, are you putting it more on the guards, in terms of the decision making, hey, you have the ball in your hands, don't put us in the position of 18 on the clock, and you got the first shot.
Well, the great part about our guys is that we ask them all to be great decision makers. So when the ball hits Jalen's hands or Markel's hands or Cole's hands, Paulo's hands, when it hits their hands, we're asking them to be the decision makers. So rebound and push the break. They are now the primary decision maker. So get downhill if you can get to the teeth of the defense, now you spray out and everybody knows their positions to be. We worked on that today as well. So guys understand the decisions that they're needing and having to make within a certain pace. Not rushing, not being in a hurry, but understanding that you can make quick decisions with time on the clock. Thank you guys. Appreciate it very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That was Jamal Mosley following practice today. Sorry, the audio got a little uneven there, or got a little bit ahead of the video, so there was a little bit of black screen there. Apologize for that. I'm still learning how to do that. Hopefully we can get a little bit better at that as the season goes on. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can of course find us on Twitter you can find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun places to download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Locked On Magic. On our next episode, we will preview the Orlando Magic's first preseason game, talk about what to expect from that, plus talk a little bit about Bol and whether he is actually making an emergence here for the Orlando Magic. But now that you're done listening to us, go make your second listen to Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 daily fantasy basketball show on the planet. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.